Alright guys, my name is Goblin, and today I'm going to be giving you a Shaman PvE healing guide for Classic WoW. It's important to note that this video will be relevant for every single phase of a game, so don't worry when you're watching this video, it will be useful to you. This video will cover a number of topics: stat priority, pre-raid best in slot, enchants, consumables, talents, and lastly we'll finish off with a healing and totem playstyle. Just before we jump in guys, please do give me a quick follow on Twitch. I'm streaming on there literally, well, most nights now, and I will actually be raiding tomorrow night as well. I'll be raiding a little bit of Molten Core on my rogue, so look forward to that. So let's jump into the video. Let's start talking about stats. So stat priority is as follows: healing power is equal to MP5, then it's spell crit, then stamina, then spirit. Now the reason why I haven't put intellect in the stat priority is because every single piece of healing gear should have intellect on it. And if it doesn't have intellect on it, then I would recommend not going for it. The whole idea is that you need to stack up enough intellect so that your mana lasts long enough for a decent good boss fight. So the reason why I've put healing power equal to MP5 is because ideally you want to be going for a set, like basically gear pieces that have healing power and MP5 on them. So if it has healing power on it without MP5, then you're probably better off giving it to a priest or a druid. Especially if it has spirit on it, because if it has spirit on it, it's not for you. You do not benefit from spirit in any shape or form really. You kind of do, but you would have to wait 5 seconds for you to benefit from your spirit stat, by which time you're basically just going to be watching your raid die. So we do not benefit from spirit because we cannot regenerate our mana while casting, which is why we need that raw MP5 to combat the 5-second rule. So overall, just aim for your healing power gear with MP5, and that is basically the sweet spot, with obviously intellect on it. Let's briefly talk about spell crit, okay? I have put it in the stat priority because it is quite important. It's a decent stat, but it's a very rare stat. You don't find it very often on healing gear. It's mostly on, well, DPS gear, but nonetheless sometimes it may be a good idea to actually pick up some DPS gear if nobody else needs it. And the reason for this is because of the ancestral healing talent, which increases the target's armor by 25% after getting a healing critical. So if you are the tank healer, right, then this stat takes a little bit more priority, because getting a cheeky critical heal on the tank when you're healing him is going to increase his armor by 25%, which really smooths out the damage on the tank. So, and then stacking intellect, because obviously when you stack intellect also increases your spell critical chance. So stacking really high intellect and a little bit of cheeky spell crit is actually really useful if you have a tank healer. And you also get a little bit of extra healing critical from your talent as well. But in all honesty, as a shaman, you may be healing the tank, but it's more than likely that you're going to be healing the melee group, or basically you're going to be doing raid healing, and that's because of chain heal, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in the healing playstyle section. So as always guys, with my PvE guides, I have a really big nuts and bolt list for you, and this obviously is for a shaman. Here we have all the pre-raid best in slot gear. If you look, it's for every single phase of the game, so there are a few extra pieces that you can get from phase 2 from Diamond, which are actually a little bit better than what you can get in phase 1. And again, you're really just aiming for the MP5. In the pre-raid best in slot gear, however, you don't have a huge amount of MP5 options, but you are still trying to go for them. Then we have enchants, and obviously as more phases of the game come out, the enchants, best in slot enchants change. Because of Zul'Gurub, you get a little bit of extra cool enchants. So that is basically clearly stated in this little section. And also we have all the consumables that you need, all of your mana consumables you need, your flasks, elixirs, food even. Particularly I would say Nightfin, Soup and Sage for Delight, because they give MP5. It's really good to have some raw MP5 on your food buff as well. And also all your defensive stuff that you're going to need for specific raid boss encounters. And then we have the talents for reference. We have the max healing spec and melee group spec, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit more now in Classic Database. So this spec here, it is basically the optimal maximum healing spec. Every single talent here is you're just basically going for every single healing talent that increases your healing, and it's pretty much straightforward as that. There's really no need to spec deeply into any other tree, apart from getting like the little extra cheeky mana pool on the ancestral knowledge, and that is literally it. Obviously you have ancestral healing here as well. Talked about that earlier. That is a really useful really useful talent for healing tanks. And obviously you do need to go all the way down into Restoration to get Mana Tide Totem, but we'll talk about a little bit more about Mana Tide Totems in the next section of the video. Here we have a slightly different build, and this build is basically more optimal for when the Shaman is going to be tanking or sitting in the melee group. The reason for this is because you can get enhanced Strength of the Earth Totems and Grace of the Air Totems. So that Grace of the Air gives a flatline agility, and Strength of the Earth gives like flat strength buff to like melee groups. So if you're ever in like the group with the hunters or the melee, then you know, having a little bit of a buff on your totems is going to be beneficial. Also, even if you're in the tank group and you're going to make use of Stone Skin Totem if it's needed, that's also going to be quite useful. And another bonus to this spec is you get improved Ghost Wolf, which is really useful for if you're going to do a little bit of PvP healing as well. You can very easily PvP heal. So if you, to be fair, I would recommend this build. Basically, if you want to kind of do a little bit of PvP and PvE, this would be basically a better build for you just because of that improved Ghost Wolf. So let's quickly talk about healing playstyle. In a raiding environment, you're going to be given either two roles. You're going to be the raid healer, which is basically about topping up just random people who start losing damage, or you're going to be the tank healer, although you may even get a little bit more specific than that, and you'll be asked to heal particular groups. For instance, the Shamans might be prioritizing healing the melee groups, which is normally the role that Shamans are going to get. And a lot of the time you can actually just top the healing meters by spamming the rank 1 chain heal, and that is literally all you do, because when you stack enough healing power, then the rank 1 chain heal, you know, does a decent amount of healing, and it's very cheap on the mana, which means it's extremely mana efficient, and you can just spam that for an entire raid fight without ever burning out on your mana and top the healing meters, because you're just doing so much AoE healing on the melee group, particularly in fights where the melee group just take a lot of AoE damage, and that's basically more or less basically the Shaman's job most of the time. However, if you're healing the tank, then obviously you heal with different abilities. You can heal with Healing Wave. Probably going to heal with Healing Wave and Lesser Healing Wave more than you heal with actual, you know, Greater Healing Wave. When I said Greater Healing Wave, I do actually mean just the standard Healing Wave. So you really have to feel the waters with it, which heal is the best to kind of spam on the tank without, you know, you draining too much mana, and it's fully capable of keeping the tank alive. You know, sometimes that can be a lesser healing wave, sometimes it could be a healing wave. More or less, it is most of the time not actually, you know, the max rank heal, because a lot of the time the max rank heal will do a lot of overhealing. Nonetheless, lesser healing wave is probably going to be used most of the time, partly because, you know, the more heals you cast, the higher chance you get to proc the ancestral healing effect, which obviously increases the tank's healing by 25%. So let's talk about quickly dungeons. So when I heal dungeons, I basically, all I cast is you'll see by the footage in the background, all I cast is the maximum healing wave, and I only cast it when the tank is on half health, or just the precise amount of health lost on the tank that would be needed, basically required, to top his health up to max. So with this playstyle, what I'm doing is I'm barely casting, right? I'm barely casting. I'm waiting for the tank to actually make use of his gear and his talents just to take a little bit of damage. And because you're not casting a lot, it means you're in that MP5 rule more often. It means you're going to be in your maximum mana regeneration phase for, you know, but basically that phase is going to have really good uptime when you're clearing through dungeon content, and it means that you barely ever need to stop to drink. I mean, I can basically do an entire dungeon without stopping to drink by using this rule. Just let the tanks take a little bit more damage and do it. If a tank moans about it, then tell him to man up about it. You know, as long as you don't let him go below half health, I mean, is there really anything to be that worried about? So lastly, I'm going to finish talking about totems. Totems are an extremely important part of the Shaman playstyle. It's why it's my personal preferred healer, because it's, you know, it's a healer not just about healing endlessly. There's a little bit more extra to it. I feel like Shaman is almost like a kind of bard style kind of class. I've just, you know, described Shaman in that way before. Anyway, the most vital totem, probably as a Shaman, is actually going to be Wind Fury Totem. A lot of melee DPS are going to badger you for this. They're going to poke you for this. So what you're going to do is mostly, basically the whole principle of totems is you have to change the totem that you're using depending on what group you're in. Okay, your totem will only buff the other 4 members of the party that you're in, even if you're in a raid. So if you're in the melee group, you're going to use DPS, well, melee DPS increasing totems. If you're in a ranged spellcaster group, you're going to use mana regeneration potions. If you're in a hunter group, you're probably going to use Grace of the Air. So let me talk through the totems. So Wind Fury totem you're going to use in a melee group, pretty standard. What else do we have here? Wind Wall totem has very limited use, but it is kind of useful now and again if the group is taking range damage. Strength of the Earth totem in a melee group, pretty obvious. Stone Skin totem for the very rare circumstance that you're in a tank group. It doesn't happen often, but it's there for you to take advantage of. Grace of the Air totem, basically flatline increases your agility. You can use this, remember you can't use this with Wind Fury totem, so this is only really used when you're in a group of hunters because it only really benefits hunters. You've got Nature Resist totem. Obviously resist totems take priority over pretty much everything. So you adapt, you got Fire Resistance totem, Frost Resistance totem. You use them basically whenever they're needed and they take priority over DPS options most of the time. Flame Tongue totem can kind of be used when you're dungeoning with a tank. It's kind of useful, but Wind Fury totem is probably better. Let's talk about Healing Stream totem for a little bit. It is pretty pants, to be honest. You don't see many Shaman doing it, especially as it only benefits from about 2% of your healing power, so you can't even make this totem even more powerful. The amount of healing you get from it is just, it's just not very significant. There are some, very unique situations where you're taking a lot of AoE damage where it might come in useful, but not most of the time it's not. You've also got Disease Cleansing totem. You can use this as a kind of like a preparation when you know a lot of diseases are going to be thrown on the raid. It is really useful because it like pulses every 5 seconds. It just removes all your diseases. Very useful dispel. So apart from that, Mana Spring totem, extremely useful if you're in a group of other healers. The healers are really going to benefit from this, and even if you're in a group with other spellcasters like mages or warlocks, again very beneficial. You've got Poison Cleansing totem, the same thing as a Disease Cleansing totem. Tranquil Air totem is very, very useful if you're in a group of warlocks. Warlocks have kind of, the reason why warlocks don't top the DPS meters is partly because they have threat issues. They don't have any abilities that drop their threat. So using Tranquil Air totem in a warlock group is ridiculously useful for the Shamans because they can basically push their DPS a little bit harder. So, and then you also have like situational totems like Tremor totem, very useful for, it's basically the Horde version of the Fear Ward. It's mostly going to be used to, obviously, it can be used to, save your healers and save your DPS, but most of the time it's going to be used for your tanks, because tanks get feared, and when tanks get feared, threat resets, and it's very irritating. You've got other situations like Grounding totem, which you can use to absorb nasty spell effects. So that's like, you have to be really on the ball with that one though. You need to be looking at your deadly boss modes or your bigwigs countdown timers and using it precisely before huge nasty damage is going to come. And that is, I would say, pretty much it. You do obviously have totems in elemental combat. Sometimes Earthbind totem can be useful for situations like Onyxia Whelpings to kind of slow them down so they don't chase the healers and kill the healers. Then obviously Fire Nova totem, use this, I would recommend using it carefully because it does summon a lot of aggro, and a lot of the time it just gets annihilated, to be honest. Serene totem can use to basically buff a group DPS. If you have the mana to spare it, then use it. Same thing with Magma totem. But these Magma totem and Fire Nova, well, Fire Nova totem is a little bit easier to use, but yeah, Magma totem normally just pulls a lot of aggro and gets destroyed pretty quickly. And then Stoneclaw totem is a really, really good, useful totem actually, which a lot of people underappreciate. I would recommend using this if you ever pull aggro. If you're in a dungeon group, you pull aggro from the tank because you're healing too much or whatever, or the tank is slacking. Stoneclaw totem can save your life in a number of situations, so do not neglect using this. It is very, very useful. Anyway guys, that's where I'm getting in the video there. Hope you found it useful. My name is Metagoblin. Until my next video, ciao.